You're listening to Arsenal Pass, a flesh and blood podcast for players by players. And all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Wraith. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
Hello everyone, welcome back to episode 247 of Arsenal Pass. Hayden here with Pankaj Bhojwani as always. This week on the pod, new year, new meta. Road to Nationals week 1 is kicked off well and truly with massive events. Pankaj, highest average attendance at these events. More Road to Nationals, 50 more than last year. Nearly 600 Road to Nationals, I think, over the course of these 4 weeks. So just big weekends for Flesh and Blood. And super exciting. This week on the pod, we are going to talk week 1 of Road to Nationals, the meta. Check how we did with our predictions, Pankaj. Spoiler, we kind of nailed it. We'll go through all those things in the main topic of the pod. But first of all, Pankaj, how are you? And how was your week in Flesh and Blood?
Doing well, Hayden. Excited to hear about the growth of the game, to be honest. It's obviously something we all want and to constantly hear. I do feel like every season we hear about, higher player attendance or like most unique like registrations, like in terms of gem IDs and stuff. And to hear that that's still continuing as we enter the 7th year of the game is quite positive. And, it makes me very happy. My week in Flesh and Blood, I played an RTN. Like I said, I was going to play Fang, and I did bring that this past weekend. I went 5-1 in the Swiss, which is pretty nice. I entered top 8 as second seed. Unfortunately, lost in the quarterfinals to a very strong Gravy player. Some people might know him, Griffin Myers. He's from the Vegas area. He was in town for the weekend because his partner lives here. I managed to get there against him in the Swiss. He was my last round of Swiss, but in quarterfinals in the repair, he managed to get there against me. Although, to be honest, I played really bad. I don't really know kind of what happened, but like my concentration just like wasn't there, and I was making a bunch of careless mistakes. I definitely put it mostly on me, like not even like a variance thing or anything. It was just I just played bad, and lost that round into him. And he went on to go ahead and win the entire event, actually. So, yeah, that was my week. How was yours? And actually, before I even ask you how it was, I will say I knew that the hero you told me you're going to play last week was just not going to be what you actually play. So to hear that you pivoted on me once again, I literally wasn't even surprised. So, what else is new? Like, Hayden tells me he's going to play something and goes and plays something else. So, why didn't you tell us? Explain yourself.
First of all, awesome to... How big was your RTN, by the way? You said like 50 players? I
think it was around 50. It was around 50. Yeah, with 6 rounds of Swiss, I think it was around like 50.
Yeah.
Yeah, we usually get like a pretty big RTN, so we always have 6 rounds.
Yeah, I was... we're talking about the size of these events, and it's interesting. I just before we started recording, I saw the stats that I think James had tweeted out one thing, Brian had tweeted out another about the total events that I just kind of quoted at the top of the show. But before I saw that, I said to Pankaj, how big was your RTN? I was saying mine were really big this past weekend. They were 44 and 45 or something, I think, players, which is really strong for my area and exciting to see. And I was like, so anecdotally, the last from ProQuest season into now, these events feel like they're back, because the ProQuest season before that was not great. It was like low 20s, sort of some of the turnouts. I mean, there was one event, I think it was one of the Living Legend events, I'd say in the last ProQuest season weren't fantastic, but all the Classic Constructor ones were. So just, I thought that was interesting. So I played in a 45-person RTN. Ended the pod last week, Pankaj, of course, saying, I was like, maybe Florian, maybe Marionette, maybe Gravy. Couldn't sort of decide what I was going to play. Had been playing some games during the week. And of course, me being me, I played Arachne Slipped Through the Cracks. So I played Arachne. I didn't, I said I might play Arachne. Just the wrong one. I think I had said on the pod last week I've been playing some Slippy games during the week, and it was something that had been on my sort of radar, but I thought I had some problems with it a little bit to a degree. But I think I tested a deck list that I thought was good, that I'd kind of come to. I definitely would make some changes post the event. I think Slippy is not in an awful position, but is definitely not one of the top 5 decks. I think you're looking for a meta where you don't want to play Marionette because there's too much gravy in your meta. I think is then where you look to an option like Slippy, I think. So I do think it's decent. I had a lot of fun playing it, honestly. One thing I really like about Slippy versus something like Marionette is like your density of 3 blocks. Like all your deck is 3 blocks basically. So you can always pivot your game plan to like stacking a second cycle, which just one of my favorite things is second cycle, of course, being Arsenal Pass. So yeah, I had a good time. I had some weird rounds though.
So I do like the increased 3 block density in Slippy, but we were investigating it for a little bit. When I say we, it's more like Yuki had to like write an article on Slippy. So she was investigating a little bit, and we were, like jamming games into her. And I think we all noticed, what's the unfair thing that the deck even does now? I think that was our problem
100%.
with the loss of bonds and loss of like mantle, effectively. A good mantle target in the form of bonds. We're just like, this deck just doesn't do anything very unfair. The most unfair thing it does is play Codex of Frailty, it feels like. So I guess when you talk about stacking a second cycle, my first question is, what does that even look like? What is the big turn you're setting up for?
I mean, Torrential Toxin is still busted. So Torrential Toxin's Kiss of Deaths. I think the one thing you do get, so the unfair turns you can do, is you have Take Up the Mantle, right? So you can have access to 6 copies of Kiss of Death, for instance, if you want to stack your Torrential Toxins for in-game. But the other thing that I think, you get access to play Just a Nick. So I still think Just a Nick is really good, and Persuasive Prognosis is a very, very strong card. So you can stack in-games where you are like Mantle, Prognosis, Just a Nick sort of things. So I think you have density of good threats for the in-game. So you have a lot of flexibility in what your in-game looks like, or what your potentially mid-game bigger turns look like. But the ceiling on them is so much lower than they used to be when you're not just like Mantle Nicker Bonds coming for 12. Like it's very different. But I do still think there's something in it. I mean, my losses, I paired into Decimator Axe Dorinthia in round 1. I didn't necessarily sideboard for it. I kind of like hedged sideboarded, and probably could have played an extra 2 or 3 cards and done a better second cycle and maybe won the game. It ended up pretty close. And then I also lost to Velda. I basically played into,
oh my god,
yeah, I played into their spec. They discard the hand. I can't remember what it's called, the new spec, twice. Quite bad. Both times I could have played around it. Also, that card just snowballs you as well because it creates more Seismic Surges. So, bit bad on my behalf. But, it was enjoyable to play against a hero I've never played against in Classic Constructed. So I went 4-2. So, and I beat 2 Syndras, a Gravy, and a Verdance, and all those matches felt pretty good, I thought. So
I was surprised. Like you mentioned 2 Syndras. I was surprised at how many Syndras showed up at my event as well. I think it was the most or second most represented. There were 5 Syndras in the room. Yeah. And we all just like, good. Why are there so many Syndras here?
Well, I think Syndra is still a poster child for a pick up and play aggro deck, I think, in terms of if you want to get into the game. I think a lot of people still had the Syndra cards. But I do actually think that Syndra is still good, honestly. I don't know if we've got the right deck lists in people's hands right now. But I do think that Syndra is not dead, that's for sure. Do I think it's one of the 5 best decks right now? No, probably not. But actually, I think if we find the right list, it could be that sort of aggro deck that sits on the fringe, because there's still no true aggro king, I think, in this format. So
yeah, Dash IO is sort of like the closest thing, it seems like, but she has a very exploitable weakness, which isn't quite desirable.
Well, that's why I was interested in Slippy. That's why I was interested in Slippy, because I'm like, I think Slippy is potentially that deck. But the problem is you're playing into this section of the meta where you have to have, you're playing against Marionettes. Honestly, like you're playing against Marionette, and Kasai. Like those are just 2 very tough matchups for you. So, I feel like there's something you can do in the Marionette matchup because of the value of your deck, and you can make the matchup, I think close. But the Kasai matchup is just so tough. So
yeah, I struggle to call Slippy an aggro deck for some reason. I think it just comes back to what you're talking about, like the 3 block density. To me, Mario is more of an aggro deck than like Slippy is in the current iteration. It feels a little bit.
Marionette's like a setup combo mid-range deck.
Yeah, that's kind of what Slippy is as well, right? But like worse. I don't know.
I think Slippy's on stick, like on attack disruption is pretty good, and you're just like hitting with head jabs, right? That can push over the top. Like in a turn,
but like 2 head jabs a turn. That's like not an aggro deck.
Yeah, sometimes I mean it's like
Like that's what I mean. Yeah.
yeah, but sometimes it's like 3 attacks in a turn if you're like using boots. Sometimes there's like a dagger involved as well. Like you can still do similar plays to Marinette with like Tunic Graphene and stuff like that. It's not like you aren't doing those plays as well.
So the reason why I feel averse to calling it an aggro deck, I think it's a ceiling. Like what is like Slippy's ceiling is just so low. I just can't call this an aggro deck. Like a ceiling needs to be they block into your T-Tox, and then you nicked your blue, and you made you nicked your blue, and you mantled it into a Kiss of Death, and then you can like T-Tox, and it's just and it's still not that much damage. I'm like, okay, this.
I don't think
how do you call this an aggro deck?
I don't think damage is how you look at it being an aggressive deck, though.
Okay.
Necessarily, because there's some aggro decks out there that do less damage than that, but they're aggro decks. They're just terrible.
Okay.
Max, I don't know, like... Yeah. Anyway, I see what you mean. I think it is more... I think Slippy is still more mid-range. I think all the Assassins are, honestly. I don't think any of the Assassins are truly true aggro decks. They have aspects of aggro to them, but they're all pretty kind of mid-rangey.
Yeah, even Mario isn't... I just feel like it's the closest thing we have, but I wouldn't call them an aggro deck either. Syndra is interesting. We spoke about this a little bit in like our pre-show. Yeah, I don't know. I've been brewing a little bit with like a Kunai Kodachi Syndra build that actually wants to swing daggers, and you run Kodachi so that you can always end the turn with 2 daggers. So you flick the Kunai, you buy it back. I don't know. I think it needs more refining. I have no idea if something is there, but there are some advantages and some disadvantages to it.
Yep. Want to go on to the news? I mean, again, quite weak news front, I think.
Well, so real quick, when you were talking about Syndra, you're talking more sort of like just a previous version, but you're just looking for a replacement for Brand?
Don't know. Not sure. Not sure. I think I'm personally not sold on blues and blue lines. I think if you're playing that deck, it probably looks somewhat similar, but I think there's some things around like... I think there's probably some cards that people are carrying over that are saying, oh, this is a guarantee include because it's one of the best cards in Old Syndra, and those cards are probably just not worth playing now. And I think that's probably...
loyalty.
Yeah, and I think that might just be trapping the way people are building right now. I don't know if it will be like a massive departure from the Syndra list we've seen in the past, but I think there'll be a couple of things that are like, once it clicks of like, oh, this card is just not the right card, or actually this card is the right card, that I think these lists will improve dramatically pretty quickly. So, yeah, we'll see.
Cool. All right, on to the news then. Yeah, nothing much this week except calling Akihabara is coming up this weekend, which will be exciting. Can't wait to tune into that. And we had RTN Week 1 results, which we'll discuss more in the main topic.
Yeah, that's basically the news, right? There's not heaps happening.
Exactly.
Commander Cookout. We have a Commander Cookout question that has come from Fancy in the Discord. Arsenal Pass Discord. If you want to get your questions in for the Commander Cookout, please do so. We definitely, we'd like some additional questions, so we'd love to get your questions in. We like all sorts of questions, meta questions, non-meta questions, questions about the game at large, questions about, the philosophy of Flesh and Blood, any question that you want to ask around Flesh and Blood and ourselves in the podcast, you can do so either in the YouTube comments below. Let us know it is a Commander Cookout question. When you leave it in the YouTube comments, you can also leave it in our Spotify comment section if you'd like to as well, as our question last week came from. You can email us at arsenalpassfab@gmail.com. If you're an Arsenal Pass patron subscriber, you can get into our Discord, leave your question there, and if you see us in person, you can give us a handwritten note, as we've had a few recently as well. So thank you to all those that have given us your note, your question, and your name so that we can read it out on the pod. The question this week, as we said, from Fancy: looking at the recent series of RTN, Black Friday, etc. promos, and noticing a pattern. Did LSS think Pleiades was going to be good? Do you think Pleiades is good? If not, what do you think she needs besides 3 to 4 heroes hitting Living Legend? Pankaj.
I think the promos do indicate that LSS maybe thought the hero was going to be good. I think if I just compare to previous season, right? We had all these Gravy promos. There were all the cards that Gravy doesn't actually play, but were the promos for it. Like there was the Hoist Them Up, whatever, the D-React, the block card, I think. All that stuff. There was the Armory deck. And Pleiades followed a very similar pattern, where she released with an Armory deck. She's only one the weapon in the set, and then has a Black Friday promos and all these calling promos, these RTN promos, to your point. So I do think they expected her to be good. I don't think she is good, though. She has the Lyeth problem, which is sort of like the Runeblade problem of you need to see the correct ratios. You need to see your cards in the correct order and of like kind of similar ratios. But then she doesn't have the Lithe advantage of getting a whole extra card to match, to try and achieve that consistency, right? Of finding the buffs and the attacks in the correct order. Lithe has a full extra intellect to try and achieve the correct mixology, if you will, but she doesn't. She instead has evasion, which is strong. Confidence tokens are actually kind of busted, like to the point where I think if she was good, it's a very unfun mechanic almost, or maybe we'll just see more cards like Reinforce the Line and Oasis Respite maybe to get around it. But confidence is a very strong piece of evasion, which and because of that, I'm actually down for the idea of maybe release her at a level where she's not crazy strong and like build her up slowly, because I think if she's landed super strong with freaking confidence, it would be very, very impressive. That being said, please give confidence to Marlin as well, because I think that's kind of what Marlin wishes she had. Overpower is like so fake in that deck. I really wish she had confidence instead. It's kind of what Marlin wanted. But yeah, TLDR, Pleiades, not good, inconsistent, but confidence is strong, so let's maybe slowly build her up.
Pankaj wants revered Ranger next, please. A little RR action. I don't think Pleiades is good right now. Do I think that LSS thought it would be good? I don't actually necessarily think they thought it was going to be good out of the gates at all. I don't think they've missed that one. I don't think that's a surprise to them. Will Pleiades be good at some point? Yeah, I think potentially, because to your point, I think the tokens, the confidence tokens are really strong. I also think actually there is just kind of a, like, I think being able to manipulate what you do with the suspense and being able to set up these like sort of quite powerful turns, I think there is a really powerful thing there. What I would say though is typically LSS have been really careful of this kind of mechanic, or this kind of ability for a deck to pump out really, really big turns because of things like a mechanic like suspense, for instance. So they don't love massive combo turns, right? I think we've kind of seen the way that they've preemptively banned even cards in the past, like Berserk, or is it what's called Berserk? The cards off the top of the deck one from Brute.
Berserk and Talk a Big Game. Yep,
Talk a Big Game and things like this. So I do think they print these heroes with the idea that they want you to be able to do inconsistently some of these bigger turns. So I'm kind of torn, because I think that I can see this avenue where Pleiades goes. A few cards get printed to help the payoff of these bigger turns. Some nicer kind of 3 blocks in the revered slot that also help you as well, potentially in the mid game, and you can set up these game states where I think it could be really strong. But I also see a point where LSS don't print as many of those or the right ones that we need to get Pleiades over the line. So I think there's going to come a point where Pleiades ends up being kind of around a tier 2 deck at some point. I think I can see this. What I would say though, just going back to the printing policy in terms of, or not policy, but the reason for printing these promo cards, I think LSS want to strike a balance between printing a lot of like chase cards in promos and printing like telling a story, I think, with their promos as well. And obviously the first kind of way they did this was with Prism back in the day, right? Light Illusionist with the original Prism. And I think, they've I guess there was like this what's the word, like not stigma or connotation, but this kind of like, it was like, oh, Prism play, blinged out Prism players was kind of like a this like kind of thing, right? This meme that people spoke about, and I think
stereotype, which still exists. Illusionist players are just like that. Yeah,
magpies, whatever you want to say. But I do think that they want to choose that for art they really like. For instance, they were so proud of the Aura art, the original 4-cost Aura's art, right? And I think Pleiades in a lot of the art does look really cool, and I think they want to highlight Super Slam. And could they have chosen RKO, which is arguably the best hero from the set so far? Yeah, they could have. And did they know that RKO was probably going to be best? Yeah, I honestly think they did. But they chose Pleiades because I think it tells a story that they want to tell. So I think they strike a balance between printing chase cards. Oh, here's a convention or a calling World Tour promo. It's Pummel, it's Snatch, it's Fate Foreseen, it's Sink Below, all these things, balancing off against some of these other promos as well. I mean, we've also had, more ad hoc promos, like I think about like the Raisin Army tokens and that sort of thing, and some of these other promos. So I think it's not about they thought Pleiades is going to be good, so they printed promos for it. I think it's also about the story that they want to tell.
And if you think about it from a value perspective, if you're going to bling something out, it makes way more sense to bling out the thing that stays on the field, right? Mm-hmm. So like you have these auras, which like Pleiades has. You have the allies from Gravy, the Dromai allies, the Prism auras. So that makes a lot of sense as well. These pieces are the ones chosen to go get blinged out and have Marvel art treatments. Even like Teklo, right? Has all these Marvels on his
Teklo core,
on his equipment.
Yeah.
No, the Evo, the blue Evos have like Marvel
Teklo
treatments on them. The Teklo-Vossen, yeah.
But even like Teklo Core was like a cold foil skirmish promo, for instance. Like I think you're right. Actually, a lot of it is. I think you've actually kind of just nailed it, honestly, Pankaj. A lot of it is, board presence and those cards sitting on the board. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Quick aside about your point on making the big turns like less consistent and require more to like set them up. I don't know. I see a Gravy play Prismatic Leyline and deal 20 to me, and that's all they played. So some heroes get it easier than others, let's put it that way.
Oh my gosh, it wouldn't be an Arsenal Pass episode without Pankaj having a whinge about Gravy.
Of course. Hey, top of the leaderboard here, called it.
Gravy is the best deck. We did say. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess you want to get
Should have nerfed him more. Chart the high seas wasn't enough. Anyway.
Do you want to get into the main topic of the pod?
I do.
Okay. If you want to get your questions in for the Commander Cookout, please do so. Thank you, Fancy, for your question. Interesting question. I like questions like this. Let's get into the main topic of the pod, and it is breaking down week 1 of the Road to National season. I think let's just get straight into it and talk the results first and talk what we expected, any surprises, things like that. So Gravy Bones did have 13 wins this past weekend. It was 17% of the wins, and closely followed by 3 decks, actually, all equal on 8 wins, 10% of the win share. Arachne Marionette, Kasaya the Golden Sand, Verdant's Thorn of the Rose, and then rounding out that top 5 is Dash.io Pankaj. Basically exactly what we said last week, although I think we both agreed Gravy Bones and Marionette maybe were going to be 1 and 2, whereas Marionette's actually tied with Kasai and Verdant's. I had Verdant's higher, you had Kasai higher. They've ended up tying as well. And then, did we agree that Dash.io was kind of number 5 probably? I can't remember.
I don't think we got down to there. Yeah, I'm not sure. But we both I had Kasai as my 3rd and you had Verdant's as your 3rd. It's interesting that they both just end up being tied. I'm not sure whether we went all the way down to like 5th. But another thing that we were correct about is that KO's bad. And KO's the way down at like, 4% of the wins with like 3 wins? Yeah.
Same number as your beloved Fang.
Not surprising to KO.
And Arachne Huntsman.
Yeah.
Cool. We spoke about Florian.
I guess
we spoke about Florian as well, being a rising pick and one that I thought wouldn't show up massively but would do well this past weekend. 4 wins from Florian, so ahead of the likes of a lot of the, I guess it's the best of the rest. I guess Dash.io and Florian is what I would say before you get into your Huntsmans, your Jarls, your Fangs, your KO. I think it's KO sits. That is KO's. Honestly, that is KO's home. Where it's sitting right now. Auxilio, actually, I think you spoke about Auxilio. You thought Auxilio was the 5th deck, and I think I said Dash.io. I think Auxilio had an 3 wins. So it's honestly it's not that far behind, right? And I still think Auxilio is a really good deck.
Yeah, and I also made a prediction that I did say it was 2 weeks too early, and I will stand by it, which is Prism being currently, like this past weekend, she had like 3 wins. I think we are now, I guess a week later, we're like a week away from Prism becoming maybe in the top 5, top 6, especially with people realizing that KO actually isn't as good as people thought it was. I think the more KO drops, Prism can start to come back in and be more confident. Actually, this is obviously very anecdotal, but what was like the Prism representation in your RTN? Mine, there was like 1 or 2 Prisms, I think a 50% RTN. Same. I think a lot of people were just scared that KO is relevant and they didn't want to bring Prism. But I'm looking at these like top 3, top 4 decks. And I'm like, Prism seems really solid into Gravy, Mario, Kasai, and Verdance. So if they no longer need to be scared of KO, everyone needs to start packing their Prism hate again.
Yeah, my problem with Prism, so my hot take is I don't think Prism's going to rise this RTN season. I think it's unfortunately just not well positioned. I think a lot of the decks, like even if it does have a good week, I think immediately the Marionettes and Gravy, the Marionettes and Kasai's, which are in that top 3 at the moment, or top 4 at least, depending on how you look at it, I think they put back in their poppers that they need, and I think naturally their game plans are actually kind of good into Prism. So with the 32 life Prism, so I'm not convinced, honestly. Verdance, yes, I agree. Very good against Verdance.
I can see the Kasai piece where Kasai's natural game plan into Prism is kind of nice. I'm not so sure about the Marinette one. Like, I've seen Prisms, like, the Prism knows how to, like, really just restrict the Marinette from marking them, because you do have calming gesture, right? And, like, ways to make spectral shields. I've seen some Prisms just sort of cripple the Marinette by being like, okay, I'm in a space now when I'm not marked, and I have 3 shields on the field. You literally just don't get marked the rest of the game, and the Marinette's cards just, like, don't even work.
It feels like a pretty snowbally matchup to me. Like, it feels like a lot of the game is determined in the first 2 to 3 turns of the game. Because, like, can you prevent them marking early, and then can you prevent them? Because if you mark early and then get in like a 12, 14 damage turn with disruption, you can kind of snowball that on a following turn, like with a flipped Marionette, for instance, like an Agent of Chaos on the third turn as well. But if you can like kind of stop that, or you can force blocks out of them or something. The other thing is, to your point, Marionette doesn't block that well. So yeah, I think you're right. I think Prism is probably still favored in that matchup, even if the poppers come back in. But I don't think it's massive. And then I think you've still got to deal with Gravy Bones and Kasai, and things like Dash IO is still very good. Florian is coming back up.
And you have to deal with the stray decks. I think we both experienced this at our RTN, where we brought this deck that we thought was good into the field. And I will talk about Fang a little bit here as well. Again, looking at these top decks, I'm like, yeah, Gravy, Mario, Kasai. Like, yeah, I'm happy to play Fang into those, right? That's why I brought it. But then you'll play into the not meta decks, and then that's where you're like, maybe Mario would have been better here, or Kasai would have been better.
Gravy.
Like my round 1 was like against like an aggro Riptide, for example, which is like, it's not a great matchup. I managed to like squeeze it in there, got a little lucky. But yeah, it's like, and this is some similar problem exists with Prism, right? Like, we are talking about how KO isn't great, but you're just gonna randomly roll up into like a KO, or that one person who brings Victor every event, and you're just like, damn it, why did I choose to bring Prism? So she does suffer from that, even though she might have a good spread into her top heroes.
This is why, I think when we spoke last week, and I still feel the same way, Gravy is the best choice, I think. Like, I still think Marionette is equal, potentially, as the best deck with Gravy, but and I do genuinely think Verdance is up there as well. But Gravy just has such a good matchup into random stuff. Like, if you're like, here's the fatigue deck, and you're like, okay, well, I'm playing Gravy Bones with like a Humperdinck Remembrance Plan, so it's fine. Or here's this random Guardian, and you're like, okay, I'm playing Gravy Bones, so I couldn't care less. So I do think that is like, it does tip Gravy Bones over the edge, and I think that is going to kind of be the story of, and I really want to get this really clear for people. I think that is the story of an open, non-invitation meta. I think Gravy Bones is always going to edge ahead a little bit. When we get to tier 3s, tier 4s, I think you're not going to see Gravy perform at that same level, because people are making picks into a tighter field, and they can target, the meta in a tighter way, as opposed to, I play my Fang, for instance, or I play my deck that I want to target the meta with, and I get paired into this round 1, or I get paired into this thing round 3. Whereas in a tighter meta, obviously that's going to happen less. So,
what's interesting is that I actually have a similar sentiment for Verdance, but for a different reason.
The opposite.
Where I feel like Verdance, to your point, is like strong right now on like an RTN level, and then gets worse at a tier 4 level, to your point as well. But not because people are going to target her, like specifically because of deck choice or something, but just because people are better into playing into her. Like, I still feel like at the RTN level, a lot of people just aren't punishing her by like letting her keep a big hand. I keep seeing people like eat a full Felling to the face and try and like continue like matching her like on numbers when she has her strong turns, instead of just being like, okay, fold, have 5 cards, you're not online, like what you're gonna do. Just plays like that, because I feel like raw power level wise, especially looking at these top heroes, Verdance isn't like the Verdance Mario matchup. We've been speaking about this for weeks. Is like a coin flip at this point. Gravy is obviously bad for you, and then there's these other decks where it's like, if you can punish the Verdance, it's like you actually make it like a fine matchup. And but at the RTN level, people don't play as well as they should into a Verdance, and then they sort of let her get the free value. Whereas at a higher level, I expect her win percentage to go down a little bit.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I also think that just the meta spread doesn't help Verdance. So, for instance, if we believe that Gravy is the best deck in the format, its representation is generally going to be higher at a higher level event, because you narrow down the tail and you tend to increase the head in terms of the top decks versus the bottom decks. So that would not be good for Verdance if Gravy Bones increases, or if Marionette is to your point, coin flip. I need to play it more. I go back and forth on thinking it's a coin flip versus thinking it's Verdance favored, honestly. But I do either way. It's close. So that happening, I think is you just get less random stuff that Verdance is so good into. It's like you get less like KOs, you get less like
Guardian.
Yeah, like Victor's showing up, Dorinthia's showing up, like this sort of thing. So yeah, I agree.
But if we get more Florian, Verdant's back on the menu.
Yeah, but that matchup is not what it used to be, honestly.
Yeah, true.
So
it's gotten easier for Florian for sure.
Super interesting. Okay, so I think we can say we did a pretty good job of our predictions last week. I don't think it was that hard. I think we've been playing some games. I think the only big calls that maybe people might have disagreed with us on was the fact that we were like KO is pretty trash, and that Verdance is maybe better than people. I mean, it won the last event, so I don't think that was that super controversial. Maybe that Dash.io was top 5 deck. I don't know.
I got a lot of flack for saying KO was bad. Actually, at my local RTN, one of my locals brought KO and was just like, "Oh, you said this deck is bad."
How'd they go?
Well, Jane, if you're listening, here you go. Here's the results for this week. So
So yeah. I guess where do you want to go next in terms of breaking this down? I guess my question for you probably is, do you think that anything that you said last week, has anything changed for you in terms of what you called last week, or what you think is the state of the meta? Before we get into how this meta starts to adapt from here, I think let's just take stock of, is there anything you feel differently about after the weekend? You still feel the same about Acilio?
Yeah. I think Acilio is definitely a deck to look at for sure. I think Acilio is very strong. I think maybe my sentiment around the meta is changing a little bit, in the sense that, obviously, despite me hating Gravy Bones with a burning passion, I think this meta is actually pretty awesome. It's basically a carbon copy of previous meta, except there's no more Syndra. And I think that the BNR, like in the context of BNR, what happened was that they basically just deleted Syndra, right? If you just look at these top decks, it's still Gravy, Verdance, Mario up there. And then Syndra's loss has maybe brought in a few more heroes, a bit more of a wider pool. Syndra's loss, to maybe push it one step further, the lack of a clear red line aggro deck has maybe opened up the meta in some ways for these other decks to come in, which I think is just an interesting paradigm that we haven't quite seen. I think overall, this reminds me a lot of Heavy Hitters meta, where it's fairly low power. That's the other thing about the BNR, right? It deleted Syndra, and it overall just shifted the power level down for a lot of these decks, the Verdance, the Mario, the Gravies. And so the combination of those two factors of not having a super high pressuring aggro deck, these top decks getting hit a notch lower, means you can, I still think Fang is actually a good pick. And to your point, Florian is also something that's worth looking at. And all that just exists now because of lower power level and the lack of an aggro deck. So I'd say that's maybe changed, just my understanding of the meta. I think in the past, we've always, obviously I'm very guilty of this as well, we've always looked to the Illusionist or the Broad State deck as this thing that's a constricting factor. But I think something I'm learning about this past weekend is that Syndra in some ways was also actually restricting quite a few things. And to see her go away to open up space for stuff like the Fangs and the Florians and potentially more Acilio as well, is just an interesting sort of thing to study, I suppose.
I think it's important to remember that this is not a new meta in a lot of ways. We haven't had a new set or anything. We just had a BNR, right? That's what's driving all this. So I think it's hard to expect massive shifts, right? But to your point, there's definitely been shifts. I actually think what's interesting is that I think Kasai is the gatekeeper of this format in a lot of ways, like Kasai or Verdance, I think. So I think there's a lot of decks that you might be interested in playing, but you just get checked, like an aggro deck, for instance, but you just get checked by Kasai. I think is, like the Valiant Dynamo check is very real right now. And I think Verdance on the other side of that checks all the... I guess Gravy does this to an extent as well, checks the slower decks. So I do think outside of the top 5, I do agree there is, maybe Fang is playable. You're going to be hard pressed to hear me say that I think Fang's good. Yeah, Florian is I think a real option. But honestly, actually outside of that, Acilio, yeah. But if you're Acilio, what of those top 5 decks this past weekend do you want to pair into?
Gravy.
Okay.
Verdance. Kasai. Those are all really good matchups for Acilio.
Then Acilio is definitely on the table. Acilio is definitely on the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna push back a little bit on Kasai being a gatekeeper. Like, I feel like if Kasai is a 55 or 60 matchup, like that's just not, I wouldn't say she's gatekeeping that deck. Like, gatekeeping to me is very much like, like Gravy into like a Victor. Okay, yeah, that's gatekeeping. Verdance into a Victor, that's like gatekeeping. But like, okay, you're like a little unfavored into this. I wouldn't call that, like, I wouldn't say Marinette gatekeeps Acilio. Marinette's maybe slightly favored in the matchup, but that doesn't mean it's a gatekeeper, right? You know what I'm saying? Kasai as a gatekeeper just feels, at least for in the context of like an aggro deck who's maybe slightly unfavored. Yeah, I don't know. I don't fully agree with that take. I think that is one of Kasai's good matchups. That's why you bring it.
I guess I also disagree with how people use the term gatekeeping as well, because what I would say is like people go, to me, an unfavored matchup is an unfavored matchup. Like I couldn't care less if it's 70% or it's 55% for the other hero. Like honestly, I actually couldn't care, because I think numbers are so arbitrary when people talk about this game of like, oh, it's a 70% or it's a 55 or it's a 60%. Like often I think people use those incorrectly, because it's usually unfavored, and then generally the player skill either pushes that gap wider or keeps it about where it is to slight. Like generally the player gap doesn't narrow things as much as it does potentially make it significantly bigger, I find. So I don't know. I do think that there's a lot of decks where I look at it and I go, oh, I could be interested in playing this. But if I think Gravy, Arachne, and Verdant's the best 3 decks in the format, and I'm good into 2 of these, but then I'm bad into Kasai as well, I have no interest in playing that deck. And that's kind of what I mean. I think there's a lot of decks where I look at it and I go, oh, good Gravy matchup, good Marionette matchup, I'm interested in this deck. Oh, my Verdance matchup is not great, and now there's my Kasai matchup. So I think it's really hard to find a deck that's good into 3 of these 4 decks, and that's why these decks are being played, right? I think honestly, that's actually the only reason Kasai is doing well. But I don't know. I guess that's kind of what I mean.
So interestingly, Acilio is actually good. The 3 of those 4.
Yeah,
right?
that is
Grand
interesting.
to Gravy, Kasai, and Verdance. Yeah, there's a lot of it's good like on paper, but in the end, it's still Acilio where it's. I think this is very much to your point of like people making up arbitrary numbers, where it's like, yeah, you're like favored into the Verdance, but then you're freaking Acilio. You're just gonna draw those hands which do literally nothing, and then also literally don't block, and then you're like, okay, great, I just took all this damage, did nothing on my turn, and just like passed, like twice in a row, and it's just like, okay, so. I think that's maybe keeping a lot of players away from Acilio potentially. Also, there is a lot of technical play to that deck.
Yeah, there's also a lot of people with bells in their decks right now.
True, yes.
Every list
bells.
I see has
God.
bells in it, so I'm just like, yeah.
Yeah. He's surprisingly easy to tech for as well.
I know. So I think a bit of a glass cannon, potentially, Acilio. I think that's maybe the challenge. Do you think that is the 7 best decks right now? Like, we're really starting to get technical. Do you think it's these top 6 plus Acilio? Or do you genuinely think Fang is in there somewhere?
I would just remove Dash.io, Acilio, and Florian from that and just be like, we have like 4 top decks. And then these other decks are playable. And if you get the correct matchups, if you're experienced enough, if you tech well enough, then you can go ahead and play your games. I'm not sure if I want to go reach out to, okay, these are like 7 decks and you think of. I think it's like 4. Just add a bell to your deck so you can think about Acilio a little bit. But I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm bad into Dash.io, and then that makes me averse to playing a deck, for example. That's why I don't want to put Dash.io and Florian in that category, because I'm not making a deck choice based on those heroes. I will make a deck choice based on Verdance, Kasai, Mario, Gravy.
Yeah.
But because the others aren't in that, I do want to make a delineation between them. Instead of 7 best decks, it's these 4 best decks. Mm-hmm. And then if you have extra space, fine, you can think of this Acilio or think of a fatigue plan for Dash.io.
Okay, that's fair. I do think there's a bit of a top 2, a top 4, a top 7, personally, whether you want to call that a tier list or not. I won't, but okay. I do think that.
So your top 2 is it still Gravy Mario? Like is Mario the second one?
So. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think Marionette is. It's so interesting because this deck shouldn't be as strong as it is. Like, it's full of 2 blocks. You should be able to exploit it, but it just seems like people aren't able to. So it just
the evasion is
strong.
also impossible, right? They're like, oh, Tunic, Callistra, holding 4 cards, and you're like, you need to think about like T-Talks, you need to think about these reacts, and you also need to think about Codex. So you can't just. It's just like, it's pretty insane. I'm gonna go a step further from you actually. And I'm gonna say there's a top 1, and then a top 2, and then a top 4. Actually,
Okay.
I do think Gravy is stronger than Mario. Like right now, like he's just a slight edge ahead of Mario. Where I think if you tell me you can pilot Gravy effectively and can pilot Mario effectively, I'd be like, just go play Gravy. Like, why? If you can pilot both decks to maximum capacity, like in this theoretical world, I struggle to see why you'd play Mario over Gravy.
Because you think that people are going to play Kasai, Dash.io, Asilios. Like, Gravy has a better spread, I think, in the top few decks, but I mean, I don't know if that's true, actually. The only thing is it beats Marionette, right? But Marionette beats a lot of the things that beats Gravy Bones. So I think I honestly think it's really close, actually. Because I think a lot more people are playing Kasai.
It is close.
I think Kasai is going to actually have an uptick this week. Honestly, I don't agree with it, but I think people will play more Kasai because of the Gravy piece. Like, okay, if I said to you right now, looking at these I'm going to say this top 7 decks, and you wanted to beat Gravy, like your number 1 priority is beat Gravy, and then be good into your random RTN field, what are you playing?
Yeah, Kasai makes sense, but also, I mean, can I say Fang? It's not in the top 7, but like I still think Fang is like fine. Like,
but is the average player going to make that call? Like, that's fine.
True, yeah. Kasai and Fang actually have very similar matchup spreads, right? Like to me, Fang just feels like a little bit of a strictly better Kasai. It's like why I'm playing him, because you're good into Kasai. Like they have very similar matchup spreads where they both are positive into like the Gravy. Actually, I would say Fang is good into Marinette as well, like better into Marinette than Kasai is, and I think Fang is better into Florian as well. If we're putting Florian in this top 7, and then very importantly, if you think about the mirror, Fang beats Kasai in the mirror. So it's just like I'm just like Fang feels like just better Kasai, so that would be my answer. You do take a loss on the Verdant side, and probably a little bit of a loss on the Dash.io side as well, because you are less good at like fatiguing them, for example. But overall, to me, it feels like if Kasai's in a conversation, then Fang should be as well. It's just, I guess, like where I'd put it. But yeah, to your point, yeah, if you want the deck that's like positive into Gravy, yeah, go play Kasai.
Sure.
Yeah.
I guess where people might potentially disagree with you is on the Marionette matchup, potentially, like for Fang.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true.
Okay, so it sounds like we agree that there's at least a top 4 decks, whether you think there's a 1 or a 2 above that. The top 4. Gravy, Marionette, Kasai, Verdance. So, maybe you're going to the Calling Akihabara, maybe you're going to a Calling in the next couple of weeks, maybe you're playing a Road to Nationals this weekend. We know these fields are a bit more spread, so there is other things to consider. But if you want to target those top 4 decks, what are the best picks then?
Acilio feels quite strong in that. I would say Prism as well. I'll put Acilio and Prism in that space. Honestly, oh man, the more we talk about this, the more again Prism. I get this is like heavy hitters vibes, where it's like we had like the KO and like the Kasai up there, but after this, still Kanos and Dromai is like also hovering around, or like maybe Dromai was up there, and then like this Kano and it was Kano and Prism hovering around, and it was like Dromai, KO, and like a Hachidori or a Kasai like being up there. And so in this case, it's like the Prism and the Celios are like in the fringes, but still very, very playable. Yeah, I'm loving this meta. That was a bit of an aside. But yeah, I would say those 2 decks would be the first 2 to look at if you want to like target these 4. I'll put Fang in there as well, but that's maybe a bit more of a pet choice. I think a more realistic choice, yeah, Prism and Acilio. What about you?
Yeah, I might go back on what I said. I don't know. I was like, I don't see Prism rising. I literally said this 15 minutes ago, and now I'm like looking at it, I'm like, Prism is good into 3 of these 4 decks.
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, I guess
unlike Acilio, I think Prism struggles a bit more into like the random like before you enter the winner's metagame, Prism maybe struggles a little bit more. You're gonna find that brood, right? There's always gonna be that like 1 or 2 Reinars that just want to roll scabs every turn, and then there's like the KOs obviously. So like Prism will struggle more there compared to Acilio. But I think once you get into the winner's metagame, they both seem very solid.
Yeah. Okay. I give a shout that Prism is better than I'm giving it credit for, potentially. I think what I'm also solidifying is that these top 2 decks are just the top 2 decks, because I'm looking at like their matchup spread, and I'm like, okay, Marionette. Having played some Marionette Gravy games, I do think it's like only slightly unfavored for Marionette. I don't think it's actually that crazy. Marionette like going first and then just like snowballing the game is very real. So I think it's like we're talking about numbers. I think it's like slightly unfavored. I don't think it's massively unfavored. But
Okay.
if I look at the top three, okay, Arachne, rough, you're slightly unfavored. Into Grave, you're unfavored. What do you want to say? Good into Kasai, flipping into Verdance. Okay, good. Gravy Bones, good against Arachne. Struggles against Kasai, good against Verdance. And then both those decks are good against random stuff. So I just think that I'm like, yeah, I think these are the two best decks.
Yeah, I think honestly, I'll probably be playing Mario if, in my opinion, the Mario Gravy matchup is pretty bad.
Interesting.
Not just slightly unfavored. Maybe I'm doing something wrong or something. But if I can maybe make that a little bit more of a tolerable matchup, I would be playing Mario.
I do think there's list dependent things with Marionette. I'm actually really interested right now in some of the Marionette lists I've seen that I'm like super surprised about their card choices.
E-Strike? Is that the one for Chum, basically? Was E-Strike's basically your Chum answer?
Yeah, I mean, but this is what I would say about the matches I've played of Gravy into Arachne, is if there's not a Chum in the first two turns, I actually feel like I'm favored as Arachne. But what I would say is that Gravy can turn 3 a Chum, land another Chum on turn 4, and all of a sudden start to claw back. And if you don't have a way to clear it, plus also present a threat, or be able to double clear if they double ally, so say they're Rigger plus Chum, then I think you start to lose 5-10 percentage points pretty quickly. So it's also stuff like they're building so heavily into, some of these lists are building so heavily into inertia now as well, Codex of Inertia, and actually to the point where you're making pretty terrible deck building choices to be able to support that. Like the new reaction from the Slippy Armory deck, like playing that sort of thing so you don't brick
Knight's
off
Embrace.
Yeah, you don't brick off your Codex of Inertia. I'm like, so in order to make sure you get value out of the Ponder token, you're playing a card that gives you 1 value, except when you draw it, it's actually terrible. It's like those sorts of things are just quite interesting to me. So, I do think that there's I still think there's more to be explored with the Marionette list post the Allweaver banning. So, I do think there's a lot of bandwidth still there. Gravy Bones, I feel less so. I feel Gravy Bones is pretty settled.
Yeah, I mean the ban, like they banned 3 blues and people weren't even on like 3 of like some of the other blues, so they just like shorted up, right? Like not everyone was in 3 Tip the Barkeep, for example, just like added 1 or 2 more of those, some other random blue. It was like very straightforward replacement, I think, for them. I want to go back to your point about like the Mario versus Gravy matchup. Sure. You're like, okay, if the Mario goes first, if there's no Chum by turn 3,
turn 2,
then there's a game to be played.
Turn 3, I think you're okay.
Well, at that point, I would say I'd be like, that's a solid unfavored matchup, right? I mean, because they do have Call to the Grave. It's not like it's just 3 copies.
Yeah, for sure. 6 copies.
So it's like, so if you lose a die roll, you're immediately unfavored. If you win a die roll and they find their Chum early, you also, like you know what I'm saying? It's like, unless there's a solution, a good enough solution. Maybe E-Strike is the answer, or...
Yeah, I've seen E-Strike. I think that's interesting. I mean, I was looking at, for like, the difference between first and second is like about 3 percentage points in win rate between Gravy and Marionette. So it's not actually as significant as I would have thought. I would have thought it'd be. So there's some matchups where going first versus second is like so significant. It's like 5, 6, 7% difference in win rate. For Gravy versus Kasai, it's only about 3% different, which is interesting.
Are you looking at these results on, like, are these Star Shot results or is like Fab Blazing?
This is Fab Blazing
results. Oh, okay, cool. Very nice.
So it is interesting. I don't know. This is the thing of like using numbers. Some people are like, oh, it's a 40 or it's a 45 or it's like, I don't know. I'm just like, it's slightly unfavored to unfavored. I don't know what else to tell you. Mm-hmm. I'd rather be on the Gravy side, but I don't feel like I can't win games on the Marionette side fairly consistently.
Mm-hmm. So. Where are you at now on Florian? Because you were fairly high about it last week, and like, I guess what changed for you, or did anything even change for you?
Oh, so the reason I didn't play Florian last week is basically I went to a Pro Quest on the Sunday, and the Pro Quest on the Saturday was like double digits Verdance being played, and I just didn't feel like playing against Verdance or like playing Earth Mirrors all day as Florian. So I was like, oh, I think I'm going to play Assassin. And then I was like, I still don't have enough reps on Marionette yet. Like I'm still getting games and things like that. And I was like, maybe I'll play Gravy. And I didn't have Prismatic Ley Lines, and it was a bit late to try and organize getting off someone. So I was like, you know what? I have Slippy sleeved up. I've been playing some games with it. I've been enjoying it. I will get a chance to play a bunch of Road to Nationals this season. I'm confident I'll be able to qualify. Not a problem. I'm going to play Slippy. And that's kind of my thought process on the Saturday or the Friday before I headed to my Road to Nationals.
I have to say, I am surprised that you're like, there's double-digit verdants, and then your answer was Slippy. I'm not sure this Slippy is good into verdants.
I like that matchup. I think it's gotten a lot better than it used to be, because one of the problems in that matchup is like, so you can as Slippy you could go one of two ways. I think you could go and try and push damage early and try and get them into a point where you get a bit of a life lead so that you offset Storm Striders effectively, and then you can play AB3 if you could either play AB1 or AB3, and you could set up towards an end game. There was also ways that you could actually potentially get them pretty close to fatigue. A lot of them were playing evergreens into you for that concern, because they were worried about that. I don't think it ever actually ended up at fatigue, because you just ended up usually killing them or dying. You get down to the last few cards. You usually get to your second cycle, and either they'd have enough life to survive your second cycle, or you'd not have enough life and they'd just kill you with Storm Striders. I think what happened, the way you got to that end game state, is because they were able to turn on early, right, with Rootbound Carapace, and be able to start pinging you while keeping their life total reasonably high. So that's how they would out advantage you in that game state. Now they don't have that. So I actually think, of course you don't have bonds, right? But I think that, I think it's not a bad matchup, honestly. I think it's actually,
okay.
I also really enjoy that matchup as well. So I'm like, unlike playing Florian into Verdance, where I absolutely don't want to play that matchup because I also just don't find it enjoyable. I actually think the Slippy Verdance matchup is really fun. So, and I like playing fun things in Flesh and Blood. I'm in my Pankaj era of just playing the things I enjoy. So
that's interesting. I almost wonder whether Verdance can maybe exploit some of the cards on the Slippy side. Like, they've lost Rootbound, but a lot of your cards just banish cards for them. In a way that you don't even really have an option. You can't be like, oh, I'm not going to banish off the top of this card, right?
Unless it's just a Nick.
And
which I was doing every single time.
Yeah.
No banish.
Nick, yes. But a lot of the other cards are like, oh yeah, cool, yeah, this will banish a card at the top. And I wonder whether Verdance can maybe exploit that a little bit to sort of go around their own Rootbound band and be like, okay, cool, I've used your cards to get my first Earth card and banish. Now my first fighting comes in for 8. I've just like turboed online a little bit.
Yeah, you do have to be careful of that. So I think, for instance, I don't play mine out of Desire in that matchup, for instance. Like I side that out. So I do think there is, that is very true. I'll put my my Slippy list and sideboard guide up on my sideboard notes up on the Patreon if any of our patrons want it. I think about playing Slippy this weekend. I think it's interesting. Will I play it again this weekend? Probably not, unless I have a really interesting breakthrough that I'm super excited in terms of an update to the list that I want to play. I tested out Codex of Inertia and Slippy this weekend. Don't love it. I've changed the list already. But I'm probably, we can talk about it now if you want. I'm probably just playing Marionette or Gravy this weekend. I don't think I'm playing anything other than those two decks this weekend.
Last week, I spoke about how Verdance like confuses me, and I'll say that hasn't changed.
So
I'm just looking at this Verdance like in this pie chart, and I'm still just like, what is like? I think she's just literally riding the fact that she's good into the rest of the field, but not the top decks. And then also it's like RTN level, and so we spoke a little bit earlier about how, maybe not enough people are exploiting like Verdance's weaknesses. Because I'm just like, it's just when I see like good players play against Verdance and like any of like meta hero, I'm just like, what is like this Verdance is like. I don't know. It's just fine. It's not bad. But it's just okay.
Can I ask you a question? I spoke about like 7 decks being in this kind of field. Let's expand that to your beloved Fang. So I can tell you what, let's look at all the heroes down to Acilio and Prism, because we were like, all the heroes in week 1 that had 3 or more wins. What of those are bad matchups for Verdance? Gravy,
Prism, yep. Acilio. Oh, I was starting from the bottom, but yeah, sure, we can start from the top.
Start from the top.
Gravy.
Yep.
Gravy, and then Prism Acilio.
There's not many decks that are a bad matchup for Verdance. If you're asking why people are playing Verdance, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's literally the rest of the field. Yeah, basically. But I mean, but the thing is, if I ask it the other way around, like what matchups like Verdance like good into?
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna put Dash-IO or Mario in that category either, right? like Dash-IO and Mario are still very much in the kind of how things go play sort of thing, like kind of flip matchups. So so I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, what matchups do you want to play against is the opposite side of the question.
Exactly.
Yeah, but what I would say...
That's what I was talking about.
What I would
feels
say,
kind of mid.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It is kind of mid, but it's power. Like, Verdance still has power. That's the thing, right? You're still a felling deck. You're still a deck that has Storm Striders at the end of the day. So, yes, you could... it's so funny. It's that age-old, like, what do you want to play against? Nothing's really exciting about what I want to pair into. What do you not want to play against? Like Gravy Bones, I guess. Everything else is kind of fine. Like, it is kind of this odd thing where it's like it's just middle of the road, but it is powerful. So I think that's why Verdance is, for instance, a KO, right? If I see KO,
so she's KO.
Yeah,
I was gonna say
but
she's
better.
like 45 to 55 into everything.
But she's KO with 5 more percentage points. I think like that's literally where I am right now. Where I'm like, if you want to play KO because you've got a nice spread of matchups, I would say KO has a lot of 45s into the field and Verdance has a lot of 50s into the field. So I'm like, just play Verdance if you're looking for that kind of middle of the road deck. Also, Verdance is so boring to play right now. Oh my goodness.
And Verdance has some auto wins, right? You pair into like a Victor or something, or a Jarl. Like, cool. This is actually a lunch matchup.
Verdance is. I think Verdance is one of the most boring decks to play right now.
I know. It's kind of why. I mean, I've been off the hero for a while now. I'm just like, this is. I feel. We talk a lot about like pilot skill and everything. I feel like the deck is piloting me rather than I'm piloting the deck. It's like, okay, yeah.
Okay, so Fang this weekend then for you?
Probably.
Okay.
Probably. Mario is still in the consideration. Maybe I'll go investigate the Gravy matchup a bit more and see if I can make that not miserable. Then maybe I'll just play Mario.
Yeah.
And then, as always, in my back pocket is just there as like my safety blanket is Verdance. Yeah, despite her being kind of boring, but yes, it's just it's there as like a
cool.
All right, I just want to turn my brain off and like play. Like what happened in my quarterfinals? I was like, man, I lost my concentration. I just wasn't playing very well. That doesn't really happen when you're playing Verdance, because it's like, yes, I can still read that this card is the one that blocks 3 and I'll block with that one, and I can still read this card says Felling of the Crown on it, and so I need to resolve it. So that I can still do. So like maybe if I'm like feeling sleepy that day, I'll be like, all right, whatever, let's just pull out the Earth Wizard.
What a weird turn of events where I might play a lot of Assassin this season. That's kind of crazy. Next up, Pankaj is going to be playing Prism. Like,
Huntsman, exactly. Oh,
I have no interest.
You're thinking of Huntsman now, aren't you?
No, I'm not. Yeah, I say, okay, this weekend.
All right, someone clip that. Next week, he'll come back and say, all right, guys.
I'm just working my way up the Arachnes from worst to best. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
For me, I think it's Marionette or Gravy this weekend, which obviously means next week I'll come back and say, here's my Syndra list that I played.
Yeah.
I always reserve the right to... People need to understand this about me. Is like, I get a lot of ideas and I get a lot of excitement and energy from things that I think are atypical and are fun, and that is my downfall. That is something that when I go to tier 4s, I try and stamp out so quickly, because I know it is a downfall of mine, is that I want to brew, I want to do something fun and different, and that's been my downfall for a very long time. So I know that I'm happy doing it at a tier 2 level, but as soon as I get to tier 3s and tier 4s, I try and stamp that out so quickly. So as soon as I know that I'm coming towards for instance, I don't have a tier 3 event until Shanghai, I think, will be the next tier 3 event that I play. So I've got time to be Hayden and to be doing these things. So I will reserve the right to play Syndra or play Florian next week when I come onto the pod next week and say what I played at Road to Nationals. But I would say I'm more than likely not to play Marionette or Gravy Bones.
Okay. I will send you my Kunai Kodachi Syndra list, and then
Absolutely
you can tell
not.
us next week how that went.
Absolutely not. I messaged Pankaj the day before my Road to Nationals, like, hey, ship me a Fang list.
Yeah.
It was tempting.
Yeah.
It was tempting. Awesome. Anything
I
else?
mean, I made top 8, and I do think that if I just played properly, I could have gotten there. So I might just run it back with that guy.
Yeah, I want to say one last thing, actually, because if you're out there and you're listening to us be contradictory as per usual, what I will say very clearly is that if your goal is to qualify for nationals in the next 3 weeks, and you are pretty open to what deck you should play, you should play Marionette or Gravy Bones, I think, right now.
For sure.
Or Verdance. I actually think the Verdance is the third best deck to play for the reasons we just said around the open meta, the fact you just don't have bad matchups at a Road to Nationals really, apart from a couple of decks. I think Verdance is a very good, and also honestly, it's so easy to play right now. So that would be my recommendation. I wouldn't be recommending playing a Syndra, playing... I mean, if you know things like Acilio really well, yeah, go for it. I think Acilio as well. But if you know these decks that are at the top, like in that sort of 7, and you know them well, I think they're all really relevant decks to be playing right now. I just wouldn't recommend going and picking one of those up for this weekend to do something outside the box. I would say if you're going to do that, if you're just going to pick up a deck over the next couple of weeks, it should probably be Arachne. I would probably put it in order. I wouldn't recommend Gravy if you've never played it.
Yeah, and if you've like never played Prism, yeah, don't try and like play Prism in this meta. But if your name is like Kevin Murphy, then yeah, just go play Prism. It's like you're fine. Like this is chill, and just dodge the KO. That's how the armory.
I would if there was a calling in the US this weekend. I think Prism actually very legitimate choice.
Last week I said we're 2 weeks out. Next weekend is calling Columbus.
Okay, let's see.
I do think so. Yeah, exactly. I was like last week, and I was like, I'm 2 weeks early, but I'm holding to that. Now I'm 1 week early.
Okay.
And then the week after that, I think we're gonna be like, okay, Prism's actually very legit.
We'll find out
because people are still coping on KO right now, so all the Prisms are scared.
Chaos.
Yeah, to that point, I might actually cut my Prism poppers like for this weekend at least, because if all the Prisms are like, oh, we can't play because KO's around, then yeah, maybe I don't need my poppers a little bit and can like shore up some of these other matchups.
So if you were in the Pacific Northwest region and thinking about going to a Road to Nationals this weekend, Prism is a great choice because Pankaj Bhojwani will not be playing poppers in... Yeah, the funny thing is it's like, KO's dropping off. What do I change about my deck choice? Oh, nothing.
No, what changes is that if you weren't running poppers, you need to run them now because the Prisms aren't getting eaten by KOs anymore.
I think this weekend might be a weekend too early. I think you can probably get away with it this weekend. Like, let's end on this. Any hot takes for things this weekend of like things you could do or decks that are going to rise or potential just like one weekend only picks because of this current meta?
I think the one weekend only thing is very much centered on the Prism piece where you can maybe take a risk on your poppers for like one more weekend.
Okay.
Like as in the sense that you can like cut them from your 80. But I think next weekend onwards you're gonna want them back in.
That's fair.
That's like my hot take. What's yours?
I don't think I have one. Unfortunately. Sorry. I'm out of hot takes. Syndra's okay, good.
So he just puts me on the spot and then just backs out. All right, that's cool.
Yeah. No, it was just a question for you. One-sided question. Okay, I think Syndra is good. I just don't think I can't recommend it because I don't think the deck lists that people have come to are good enough. There we go. So
yeah, it's because you haven't seen mine yet. I'll send it to you.
I don't think it's going to change my opinion, but we will see. I won't pass full judgment just yet. All right, that has been episode 247 of Arsenal Pass. Lots of absolute rubbish talk in the end of that main topic. I apologise on behalf of us both, but I'm sure it's entertaining. Good luck to those at Road to Nationals this coming weekend. Good luck if you're at the calling in Akihabara as well, if you're travelling out there, or perhaps you're a local to the area. Best of luck. Interested to see how that meta shakes out. I think the Asian meta is always very interesting to see in terms of what decks show up. You know, we know they love their Florians out there, for instance. Is that going to be a big pick this weekend? We know it's in a rising position, for instance. So I will definitely be tuning in, as I know you will be, at least for some of it as well, Pankaj. But until next week, we'll see everyone on the next episode.